All right, we be live. Yes, Adam corrected me. We be live. Yeah. Hi everyone. Hi everyone in the live chat. Please send us questions because our guest has mentioned today that he's interested in also answering your questions. So today we have a Zionist from Israel, from the heart of Israel, close to Tel Aviv, here as a guest talking to us. Zarathustra.
Zarathustra. No.
Zarathustra. The actual name is Zarathustra. I don't know this English.
Okay.
Yeah, Zarathustra Serpent,
Okay.
which is a name you picked from, which is Persian prophet. This is your YouTube channel's name, right?
Yes.
So if you
YouTube.
guys are interested, interested in anything, I'm going to say Zarathustra because that's the
Okay.
actual name.
Okay. That's a
Zarathustra
Persian. That's a
That's the
Persian.
Persian version. Yeah, that's
Okay.
the Persian version. Zarathustra Serpent's channel. If you guys enjoy what he says, please make sure and go check out his channel. This is actually very fitting. I'm an Iranian, you're an Israeli, and we're talking about is like you would you say like Israel's number one enemy right now is Iran, right? So I guess we would
It's
be
the biggest threat. Yeah.
biggest threat, right?
Yeah. Actually, the biggest enemy as well because it's kind of.
Foreign threat. I would say the
Yeah.
biggest threat to Israel is actually Orthodox Judaism. So biggest foreign threat, right?
Okay.
So we're going to be discussing. Oh, by the way, we are both Zionists.
Okay.
So we're both Zionists, and we're going to be talking about debunking lies about Israel. However,
Yeah.
I'm a Zionist that is very critical of Israel. So there's that. So the reason you reached out to me, you wanted to talk about this. You were reaching out to ex-Muslims as a whole because the way a lot of ex-Muslims speak about Israel, and you were thinking that they were spreading lies about Israel or things that they don't understand about Israel, and you wanted to make sure that you correct them. Is that the case? Is that how it
Yes.
started?
So maybe I should introduce myself, my channel.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I do basically. I'm a philosopher, and I do a lot of things about philosophy. I have a series on Nietzsche, which is popular. I'm also a culture critic. Talk a lot about pop culture. I have a very popular series on psychedelia. But with that, I also talk about current issues. And when I started about 5 years ago, one of the things that we talked about back then was criticizing Islam, which back then it was shortly after Ben Affleck on the Bill Maher show said that it's gross and racist to criticize Islam. So myself and many others, jumped in and kind of had that fight of why it is legitimate to criticize Islam. But of course, we had that fight, but we didn't know. But about actually criticizing Islam, we didn't know how to do it because we don't have the knowledge. So I could use my knowledge in philosophy and my knowledge of the Middle East to help that conversation, but not much further from that. And it kind of looks like we were. Our main function was to help you guys kind of amplify your voices. And I've been kind of reconnected to it like a year ago when I realized that, you've been actually doing some good work in after I saw the whole holes in the narrative debacle, that there is. I realized that the front line has moved like tens of miles into Muslim territory, kind of. But your criticism is now really doing some good, some harm to Islamism, and but I also saw that some ex-Muslims still believe in all sorts of lies and prejudices that they were taught about Israel, and I think that. And that's harmful because first of all it's harmful because it's harmful to Jews, but it's also harmful to your cause basically if you criticize Islam, because the lies about Israel are a recruiting point for Islamists, for jihadists, and basically just an anti-West, pro-Islam point.
Let me just mention something right here. I also, yeah, there are lies about Israel, and we should know what those lies are. But a lot of people seem to think seem to be suggesting that any form of criticism of Israeli policies is a lie. Like there are also critiques of Israel's policy that are correct. Not all of them are lies, right? Not all of them is propaganda.
So I will try to do some to distinguish a little bit. The lies. There are many lies. It's a web of lies, which has been spread for decades, and it relies actually on the lies about Jews that have been a web of lies, what we call anti-Semitism, that's been going on for centuries, or millennia.
This is when you say anti-Semitism, this is something that we might be a little bit sensitive about as ex-Muslims, because we have noticed how many times criticizing Islam has been portrayed as Islamophobia. So now when there's critiques of Israeli policies and people say this is anti-Semitic, I'm like, I've seen these accusations somewhere else before.
I want to make so let's distinguish between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. But first of all, I mean, there's just legitimate criticism about Israel, where you say, okay, I'm a Zionist, I believe in your right to exist, in Israel's right to exist, but I have criticism about this and this and this, and that's and most Israelis.
Not just but, maybe because, right? Like maybe I have a lot of criticism because I am a Zionist, because I like Israel. Right? Because
look, I'm an Israeli leftist, so I also have a lot of criticism. But and then there's anti-Zionism, which is against the idea. Zionism is the idea that Jews have a right to live as a sovereign nation in their homeland. And some people say that if you are against that, that makes you an anti-Semite because you are basically you're denying Jews the right that other nations have, the right to live as sovereign nations in their homeland. But I see anti-Zionism as a form of bigotry, but I don't call it anti-Semitism because anti-Semitism is a special form of bigotry. It's the belief that Jews are evil. That's a specific belief.
Okay, let's be careful because YouTube is going to flag this video. Okay, that's not what you're saying. You're saying you're describing other people's beliefs, but please don't use that phrase. Like that was like that's perfect target for YouTube's algorithm. What the sentence that you just said. So be more careful about that. Okay, but go ahead.
But look, we have to describe it. I mean, it's also the belief that they more specifically, it's a belief that they rule the world behind the scenes.
Oof.
And can
okay. So conspiracy, there are certain conspiracies about Jewish people that we all agree that is horrible and wrong, and none of us believe in that. Right? Yes.
Yeah. And you can be anti-Zionist without believing in that. Now, in the past.
Can I actually touch on that? Because yes, we should believe. I believe in Jewish people's rights for self-determination and for them to have a nation state and all of that. But what I don't believe in is for them to have a nation state and the right to self-determination and all of that. But with the right, I don't believe that they have a right to keep that state Jewish. Do you know what I mean? It should be a state where Jews are safe and they could go live in. But to keep, I disagree with the attempt or the suggestion that they have a right to keep that state Jewish ethnically. That I don't agree with.
Okay, well, let's get to that in a minute. I just want to say that's actually the first thing I want to talk about. But I just want to say that when we talked about anti-Zionism in the past, we said that it was a gateway to anti-Semitism because the lies that they were spreading There are all sorts of lies, like that that Israel has a state religion. That the lies were meant to portray Israel as non-liberal. The idea is to delegitimize Israel. Yeah. So and actually demonize it in a way, or delegitimize Israel and portray it as not liberal. And there were lies like that it has a state religion. Some even call it a theocracy. That it has laws that discriminate against non-Jews. That it does not allow non-Jews to immigrate to it.
Well, I mean, some of these are somewhat accurate, though. Somewhat accurate. Okay, well, we could. Well, you're giving me a list. Should we go? Okay, finish the list.
No, okay. The belief that it runs DNA tests to determine who is Jewish. That interfaith marriage are illegal. That gay marriage is illegal. Those are all lies. And so what these lies create?
Well, can we address them? Because you gave me a list of each one. Okay, you finish your thought, and then we'll go through them.
So you create this image of Israel as non-liberal. So people in the West start asking, okay, so why are our governments? Why do our governments support this country? And then it kind of leads them to the idea that it's because they're being controlled from behind the scenes and all that, and that. So it's kind of a gateway to anti-Semitism. Lately, the anti-Zionist language started to actually demonize Israel and spread actual blood libels, things like that it intentionally targets civilians, that it performs ethnic cleansing on Palestinians, that it is an apartheid state, even genocide, and that's actually anti-Semitism. That portrays Israel as evil. Yeah. So okay. So what do you want to say?
Okay, you gave me like so much, and I have so much to say about each one of these things. Okay, so saying that I mean, what a lot of the things that you mentioned, they're not binary. Okay, there are extreme versions of these that are not true, and there are complete denial of them is also not true. Okay, so is Israel a liberal country? Yes, of course it is. And compared to what? Compared to Iran, compared to Saudi Arabia, compared to Bangladesh, Pakistan, it's an extremely liberal country compared to those countries. Of course, are there illiberal elements within Israel that are gaining power? Is ultra-Orthodox Judaism having its becoming more influential in Israeli politics? Are right-leaning advocates, activists managing to set the narratives more in Israel's education, more in Israel's military, and more in Israel's politics? Do they have an influence? Like you're saying, like, oh, is Israel a theocracy? Obviously, it's not a theocracy, but is religion gaining grounds in politics? Does religion have a toxic influence on everything in Israel? Not as much as if you want to compare it to an actual theocracy like Iran, not at all close to that. But is that that's a very low bar? Can we not address the fact that religion is a toxic influence on Israeli politics without saying theocracy is a high standard to meet, but religion has a toxic influence on.
Look, religion has an effect on
do you have a headphone? Because I'm hearing some echo. Do other people hear echo? But go on. Yeah.
Okay. Religion has an effect on policies in many countries, but I think you are.
I didn't finish. I think you gave me a list. I just want to touch upon all of it before you address them, right? You mentioned them. Do they intentionally target civilians? Well, we have a lot of examples for Israel not targeting civilians. We have a lot of examples for Israel going out of its way and trying to come up with procedures and technology where the collateral damage is actually very low. But we also do actually have examples of Israeli snipers targeting civilians and bragging about it and being proudly so. I have listened to Israeli politicians, high-level Israeli politicians, that have bragged about collective punishment upon entire cities or towns as a form of punishment against the crimes that were committed by other people. So it's not a binary yes or no. There are examples of them trying to reduce collateral damage, but we do have examples of crimes intentionally on civilians, and this is not even hidden. This is something that they admit to. But go on.
Yeah.
And apartheid, I also want to get back to apartheid at some point, because I think like if we could go to what the definition of apartheid is and whether or not that applies to Israel. But go on.
Yeah. So religion, I think you might be too influenced by Israeli atheist activists who have a tendency to exaggerate the effect of religion on our life. Israel is still, Israel was formed by atheists, and I mean, right now this is the first time our current prime minister is the first one who isn't atheist, or at least completely secular. Yes, I mean, you have.
I'm not exaggerating. I'm saying it's not a theocracy.
Yeah.
Do you really deny the fact that was it? Okay, first of all, how could you say that we're exaggerating the influence of religion? Part of the reason why, like even in recent history, okay, the entire argument for the settlements in the West Bank is religious. The whole country, and come on, like 90% of it is that. Like I can't think of like any, like only 1% of the people desperately try to find non-religious reasons for it, because they're trying to portray this, market this to a secular audience in Israel, but we know it's a religious argument. So the entire country has been taken hostage over a religious argument. Even recently, like the entire, like one of the main reasons why it was impossible to form a government was this challenge of like, should we like to form a coalition with the right-leaning religious groups, the fight between Netanyahu and like having.
But that's like this. But that's democracy. I mean, that you have the religious people, and they have some certain influence.
I think because you're in the Middle East and you're not used to what actually secularism look like, and you're comparing yourself with other countries around the region, and you think like, oh, this is normal. We're actually very secular. But I'm comparing you to like United States and Canada. I mean, not United States, Canada and European countries, and that you don't look very secular based on those standards. But go on.
Okay, so let's talk first of all about the first thing I want to talk about, and that's the idea that a lot of people think the Jews are Judaism is a religion when we see Jews as a nation, and a lot of people deny that or don't know that. So Jews, it's an old nation, and it's about 3,000 years old. The Jewish identity is a national identity, and because we were exiled for 2,000 years, so basically the main identity became the religious identity. But the religious identity kept the national identity as through rituals. It kept it alive, and now we are back. We are back in Israel. So now we are back to our main identity, which is the national identity. So, and when we call Israel a Jewish state, it's only in the national sense. So, so let me just explain. For instance, I'm a third-generation atheist.
Can I address that really quickly? Because
okay.
I went to Israel, and that was the main question I had when it comes to the Jewish identity. That was like, I had many other questions when I interviewed many people. Okay, and this was one of my top questions. And I talked to a lot of Israelis, a lot of Jewish atheists, a lot of Jewish, other people that are. I talked to a lot of Arab Israelis, atheist Arab Israelis, and I just wanted to figure out how identity works here. And I don't think like it's fair for us to define when you say Judaism is not the religion is this.
No, I didn't say it's not a religion. I said that it is a nation. It's also a religion. So that there's also it's a nation that has a religion. Yeah. So.
Well, I mean, okay. So you said other people see it as a religion, but that's not accurate. Okay.
The people who see it only as a religion, which it's non-Jews.
So based on my understanding, first of all, there's a lot of disagreement about this among Jewish people themselves, right? And the disagreements is actually, especially among atheist Jews, and the disagreements about this is very similar to atheists who are culturally Hindu, right? Because unlike Christianity and Islam, Hinduism and Judaism are ethnic religions, right? So because of, and there's a complication, there's a great, and the lines are not very clear cut, but I have found 4 different definitions for Judaism, and you let me know if you, based on my conversations with as many people as I could in Israel, Judaism sometimes applies to a religion, sometimes it's the name for a religion, sometimes it's named for an ethnicity, sometimes it's name of a culture, and the 4th one, which you referred to, these 3 definitions were historically the definitions of Judaism, and these were historically the definitions, the 3 different definitions for other group of people that had ethno religions as well, right? Because it was their culture, it was their ethnicity, and it was also their religion, right? Just like Hinduism, and that's why when you leave the religion, you might still consider yourself a Jew, because your culture is still the same, even though your religion might not be the same, or your ethnicity might be a Jew, even though your religion is not still a Jewish. So you might still identify as a Jew. Okay, so hence the notion of an atheist Jew or an atheist Hindu. However, the 4th definition, which is a new concept, and it is a new concept because the idea of a nation is a new concept, is idea is a definition of Judaism as a nationality. Okay, we cannot pretend that this is the inherent definition of Judaism, because Judaism is an old thing, nationalism is a new thing.
The people who say that are kind of ignorant about the Jews were a nation by every definition of the word. 2,700 years ago, in the 7th century BC, they were already a nation in the same way. I mean, essentially in the same way that we define nations nowadays. And that identity remained through those years. Through all the years, was passed on through rituals. So
would you define Hinduism as a?
I don't know enough about Hinduism, so I don't know.
So I have the problem with that is that so we could say that the definition of how people determined that we are the people of this land, that was very similar to what we consider a nation state today, and therefore whatever they considered, whatever the definition they had, applies to what we now consider the modern nation state. If you want to make that argument, fine. So in that sense, you could be like, what we consider nationality today is very similar to how the people back in the day considered themselves, right?
Also in the sense that the people were the sovereign. And the king was kind of there to serve the people.
Yeah, but the people, like, the problem I have with this is that the historic way how people saw themselves and their role within a land historically does not have to guide us about what we do today, especially if it's based on ethnicity. Like, we can do better than that. The problem I have with people defining nationality based on a word that could also be applied to ethnicity is that that's a recipe for creating an ethno-state. So if you think if you think Judaism applies to nationality, wouldn't that, what would you, so the Arab Israelis right now, right? What would that mean about them and how Israeli they are, given that they're not Jewish?
Let me just extrapolate a little bit. I'm 3rd generation atheist. All 4 of my grandparents were atheists, and still I am very much a Jew. Why? Because I'm a Jew in the national sense, and I live in Israel. It will be very hard for you to find a 3rd generation atheist Jew who lives in diaspora, because they just since they don't live in the state, in the Jewish state, and they're not they don't have a connection to Judaism anymore once they leave the religion. But in Israel, you can, and if I convert to Christianity and still live in Israel, I will still be a Jew. I will be a Jew in the national sense. About 5% of Israel's Jews right now.
What does that mean in a national sense? What does that mean?
My national identity will still be Jewish.
Okay, your national identity would be Jewish.
Yes.
What's the difference between saying my national identity is Jewish and my national identity is Israeli? Is that both the same thing?
Israeli is the citizenship. It's the same as, you know, if you live in America, so you are U.S. citizens, but you are an American by nation, and you can be, and there are quite a few U.S. citizens today who say I'm not an American.
How your national identity and your citizenship are two different things for you. Okay, so does that mean that an Arab Israeli, where does that leave them with their national identity? What is an Arab Israeli's national identity?
They can, if they want to, they can become Jews. They can become Jews and still, I mean, still be Muslim by, you know, you can be Muslim by religion, you can be Arab by ethnicity, but be a Jew by nationality. And this is what basically, I mean, I demand of them, and I think we should start to demand of them.
What does it mean? What does it mean for an Arab Israeli to be a Jew? What would that look like for an Arab Israeli to be?
It means that you become part of the nation.
Okay, what would they have? How could you distinguish between a Muslim Arab Israeli that is now a Jew and a Muslim Arab Israeli that is not a Jew? How could you tell? By the way, the people who are shocked in live chat, let me just tell you this you shouldn't be shocked about this if you're following the news, because this has been an effort made what is it called, Jewish, like make more Israeli more Jewish by I think this is a new definition of Judaism. It's an attempt to redefine Judaism as a nationality, as a way to make Israel not look like an ethno state and not make it look make the claim that Israel. No, it is new. It is completely new.
No,
okay.
No.
This is an attempt in response to not make Israel not an apartheid by saying that Judaism is not an ethnicity, but it's an identity that anybody could just accept. Anybody could accept this identity, and we know that that's not. I mean, that is not going to work in real life. I mean, you could explain to me how it's going to work, but this is just a dodging at the accusations of the bias that exists, the discrimination that exists against their people in Israel, in Israel and Palestinian territory against the Arabs, and the fact that now we have on the laws within the Israeli legal documents being so apparent, so obviously transparent about how much Israel is going to be a nation for the Jews, not just a state that has Jews in it. And because they internationally that looks and sounds and feels like an ethno state, the defense to that is to redefine Judaism as something that anybody could accept. So if that is wrong, if you don't accept that accusation, tell me again, explain to me an Arab Muslim that is not a Jew. How could you tell them apart for an Arab Muslim that is a Jew?
In the Jewish tradition, we say that you have to bind your faith with ours. That's that comes from the Bible, from the story of Ruth. So if you are a non-Jew, but you bind your faith with ours, you become part of our nation. And in today's Israel, that would mainly mean you serve in the army, and you become a citizen, and you show that you believe in the ideals of Israel. You will be accepted. And look, that's a process. A group of people, a certain ethnicity, it takes time until it becomes part of the nation. There's cultural integration and all that. But
it seems like whitewashing racism by
no,
trying to pretend that this
no.
is not
Listen,
about
this
race.
is first of all, it's not new, and I contend that every nation in the world is like that, and also I contend that without a nation state, you can't have democracy. You can't have democracy.
You know how they could have like, for example, okay, this is the alarm bells in my head. This is why it sounds like certain, let's go back in United States back during, um, slavery and all that, or maybe even after that, when racism was even more rampant in the United States than it is right now. But the way that a lot of people might have seen themselves not as bigoted against black people by saying that you could behave differently in a way that you would be like a white person. Do you know what I mean? Like they would say like whiteness is not is something that any black person could just accept as an identity by acting white, like by speaking white, by accepting white culture,
but the nation,
then having certain token black people as a way that have accepted a different culture, and just having those token black people as a way to demonstrate that we're not actually anti-black. And I feel like this is a similar thing that is happening in Israel by having certain chosen Arab people to be like, if you act like a Jew, then you will be our token Arabs, as a way to show to the international community that we're not an ethno state and that we're not an apartheid. But like it's such a imagine if we were like, as atheists, we lived in an Islamic country and we were told by the Islamic country that, oh, we're an Islamic country that was extremely discriminatory against atheists. If they had a couple of atheists, they'd be like, you know what, Muslim is not just a religion. Muslim could be your culture and your identity. And if you just accept Islam's superiority, if you accept, let's say, the Islamic Republic of Iran, even if you're not a Muslim yourself, just accept this theocracy, this Islamic Republic of Iran, as just accept its ideal and accept the Islamic culture and accept the Muslim identity. And if you do all of that, then you could be treated like an average citizen. And then you're like, is this not a form of discrimination? Just walk and talk and behave like the rest of us, and then maybe we will treat you like a normal person and an equal citizen. That's what it sounds like.
The process of a group becoming part of a nation goes both ways. The nation also changes in the process. The identity, the national identity, changes and becomes wider to engulf that other group. So it becomes more diverse in the process. There's another form another way to understand that identity. The identity becomes more diverse. It's another version of that identity, of that national identity. But a national, if a country doesn't have a national, all the examples you brought were not about the national identity. You talked about Iran, that you talked about a religious identity. We're talking about a national identity. And the Iranians have the right to say we are an Iranian state, and that would be
I don't think the way you're treated as a citizen, how much of your sense of belonging to the nation should be based on how much you accept a cultural identity or a Jewish identity. I don't think like categorizing your citizens into different tier based on how much they integrate to the society, to a certain culture and a certain ancient identity. I don't think that's a recipe for an apartheid state. That is basically a recipe for having different tier citizenship.
It's the same as America. Well, when you come to America and you want to be
there is one tier citizenship in America. There are not certain people that are more American and less American. If you are an American citizen,
if you want to join the American nation, you have to, there's this test, and you have to uphold the values
of the people who already have their citizenship. So let me ask you, for example, about this. Okay, like an Arab Muslim, okay, Arab Muslim in Israel who does not accept the Jewish identity.
Okay, so he can live as a minority.
He wants to say. Okay, he wants to live as a minority, but
Okay.
you consider this person less of a citizen of Israel than the rest of.
No.
But you just said the national identity belongs.
No.
Okay, well,
Let's
okay.
what I
Let me
say.
read something.
He has
Let me
full
read something
citizens'
to you.
right. Yeah, he has full citizen rights. But
There's two separate things. Full citizen rights, but it's seen by society and everybody as less than. Let me read a quote to you and tell me if you agree with this. And this is a quote by Netanyahu on his Facebook page. He said, "Israel is not a state of all its citizens. The nation state of the Jewish people, it's a nation state of the Jewish people and only them." Do you agree with that statement by Netanyahu?
No. The meaning is that the nation has the identity of a Jewish identity, and you can't and you have to accept that if you but you can live as a minority and not now if
live as a minority.
I suppose what he meant to say. I suppose what he meant to say is, if you live as a minority and don't see yourself as a Jew, you will not feel as attached to the state, to the identity of the state.
That's not what he's saying. He's saying Israel is not a state of all its citizens. So it's not a state of all its citizens. It's not talking about what you can do. It's talking about what this
the meaning
this country is for. He said the nation state of the Jewish people and only them. He's saying that
as an identity, look, it's an old debate in Israel. Yes, so so when we talk about a nation of its citizens, we talk about that its identity is basically it doesn't have an identity, and it's just whatever its citizens, the makeup of its citizens.
Actually, it's in the law. This is in the law. There was a 2018 2018 nation state law defined. Okay, this is actually beyond just how you're treated in society. This is within the law. It says that the right to self-determination. This is 2000 guys. This is the 2018 nation state Israel's nation state law. Right. It says that the national self-determination is unique only to the Jewish people
in Israel.
And you don't see any issues with this. You have no concern with
this. That's every country in the world. No country in the world can allow a group of people to suddenly say, no, we are a different nation. We want to form a country here. No.
What are you talking about?
If you belong to that country, you belong. You can't define yourself suddenly as a different nation and say we are.
No, this is based on every country has set of standards for who can get to be a citizen, but not based on ethnicity. It's only Israel that does this based on ethnicity.
It's based on values.
You are this is like a matrix dodging. They're using a word. This is so clever. By the way, this is such a clever strategy. Okay?
It's not based on. It's based on national identity. Again, you are confusing ethnicity and national identity.
Yeah. Why would you use the word Jewish? You do not see that this word Jewish is. Are you seriously telling me that this word Jewish has nothing to do with ethnicity? Has nothing to do with ethnicity.
Not when we talk about the identity of the state.
Really?
Most nations in the world have a certain ethnicity at the basis. Okay, most nations in the world.
Not the good ones. Which ones? Give me an example.
I mean, the French have, basically descent from the Gauls and the English descent from the
Saxons. You're talking about the circumstances of history that made certain countries have more of an ethnicity. That's different from. That's completely different with the country setting it in their laws on the side. So now you're admitting this has something to do with ethnicity. So thank you for admitting that, because now you're talking about. So you are saying that this is not just values; this is actual ethnicity.
I said
you just said other countries. Tell me what's the issue with France? What was your example about France? What's the
Gauls? You have an ethnicity that is the basis. You have
You just said ethnicity. So you have an ethnicity that is the basis. So you do recognize that the word Jewish is referring to an ethnicity. And you know how we know that this is about ethnicity? Like, come on, like Israel allows any Jewish person anywhere on the planet to to Israel and become a citizen just for the mere fact that they're Jewish, even though they have never stepped their foot in Israel. And the people who have lived in Israel for ages,
they maintain the Jewish national identity.
Oh, okay, but how do they? Okay,
if a Jew converts away from Judaism, he does not get Israeli citizenship.
And how do they determine somebody's a Jew? By blood. By their mother.
No.
Yeah. Oh, come on.
No.
They look at your heritage. They look at your. I know this for a fact. They look at your heritage. They look at your ancestry. The Israeli government looks at your. Do not tell me that you don't. They look at your ancestry.
That's the same. Look, I have British citizenship, even though I was born in Israel, because my mother was born in Britain.
Yes, that's nationality. That is not based on ethnicity, though.
It's
based on blood.
What do you mean? Again, my mother was born in Britain, so according to British laws, I'm allowed to ask for British citizenship. Many other countries have that. It's the same thing in Israel. It's the same idea. It's the same idea.
You can't reasonably pretend that the word Jewish is completely divorced from ethnicity. You can't pretend that this is just about a value system.
Again, there is every nation, or not every, but most of them. There was the initial tribe, and then over the years, other people join in from other tribes, but the identity is still there's the national identity. So when they adopt the national identity, they become part of the nation, even if they became.
Would I be able to get Israeli citizenship if I say I have Jewish identity? I highly doubt that.
You can immigrate. You can ask for come to Israel, live in it for a while, and if you live in it for a while and you show that you are become part of us and all that, you can ask for Israeli citizenship.
And the person that shows
you've been naturalized.
Okay, I highly doubt that, but let's say that's true. And somebody who's ethnically a Jew, if they apply for citizenship in Israel, and I apply for citizenship in Israel, and I say, hey, I'm a Jewish person now. Okay, I'm a Jew. I believe I'm an atheist, but I accept. I like Jew. I have Jewish. I don't know how you define this Jewish nationalism thing. How do I? Yeah, actually, tell me. How do I signal to the state of Israel that I'm a Jew now? Tell me how would that look like if I want to become a Jewish citizen?
Like I said, you can't just come in and say it's not just you can't just say it.
Okay,
you have to be natural. You have to be naturalized. That's in every nation in the world.
But somebody who's ethnically a Jew. Okay, what you're saying this is as if somebody who is like a British because of their parents is similar to that, but it doesn't sound like that. This is what this sounds like. This is what this actually sounds like to me. Imagine if somebody said United States is a country for white people, okay? And whiteness is not necessarily an ethnicity, okay? Yes, some people, when they use whiteness, they're referring to an ethnicity, but whiteness is a way of life. Whiteness is a culture. And if you signal, even if you're not white, if you signal to us that you have accepted whiteness, and if you act and behave and speak like white people because of your whiteness, then we will accept you as a citizen of the United States. Would you have an issue with that if United States all of a sudden had a policy like that?
It sounds weird that they call it whiteness, but if you change, if you replace the word whiteness here with American,
that's actually a very good question. Why did they use the word Jewish instead of Israeli? Why wouldn't they say this is a nation of Israelis instead of Jewish people? That looks suspicious to me.
Jewish and Israeli and Hebrew, by the way, are synonymous words.
Then why not use Israel? Perfect. If they are synonymous, why would they use the word Jewish instead of Israeli? If they're synonymous,
because historically Jewish has been more used. Look,
because Jewish, because when time comes, Jewish could all of a sudden, when it's needed, Jewish could all of a sudden mean an ethnicity, and Israeli can't. That's why
Israeli can. Look, Israeli can. That definitely can. But historically, when Israel was formed, the Zionists who formed it were atheists, and also they had that ideal, that you know,
that
we're
doesn't
going to
mean
form
much.
a completely,
The founders of Hindutva were also atheists.
look, let me finish. They wanted to form a completely secular state because, you know, this was the modern times. They believed that religion is a thing of the past, and all that.
I know.
And also they believed that Judaism, the Jewish religion, was kind of married to you know, the idea of exile, because there was this idea that the Jews have to wait for the Messiah to bring them back to Israel. So they define themselves as Israelis to kind of detach themselves from the religion. In times we came to the realization that, first of all, the Jewish you know, identity of exile was actually always Zionist. It was actually always believed that Israel is the homeland, and that we should return to it. And secondly, you know, that religion isn't going to go away. And then, you know, since Jews is what we've been called, and mainly for all those years, then this is
I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a question. Are you for or against the settlements in the West Bank?
I'm against them.
Okay.
But okay, no, but I'm against them. Yeah, but the thing is that well, okay, that goes into politics, but I think that they should remain and become part of the Palestinian state. If we, you know, and the people there should become Palestinians by nationality. Yeah, Jews
Do you
by.
agree that it's not fair to the Palestinians that they don't get to, that a lot of decisions that are made for them is by a government that they have not elected?
Well, which government are you talking about now?
Well, I mean, the Israeli government has a lot of influence on the day-to-day lives of Palestinians, their electricity, their water, their trade.
Look,
their mobility,
Yeah.
their mobility, and this is a government that they have not elected. Do you agree that that's not?
Well, we made a temporary agreement with, you know, gave them self-rule. We were supposed to get to a peace agreement, and they kind of never agreed to any peace agreement. And now they're back to trying to delegitimize and demonize and talking about.
Why not continue these talks with the Palestinian, like give the Palestinian state its full autonomy, full freedom, the Palestinian people the full right for self-determination, and whatever disagreements that they have, you will have the negotiations or conflicts just like any other two nations that have conflicts with. Why not just give them what? Yeah.
Well, right now, look what happened in Gaza. Okay, we cleared out of Gaza. They elected Hamas. Hamas immediately said, "We are, you know, we revoked the agreements, and we believe that Israel should be destroyed," and started lobbing rockets into Israel.
I'm not defending Hamas here, okay?
No,
I know
but,
Hamas.
But wait, but this is what happened. And this is what will happen if you clear out of the West Bank. Now, if you clear out of the West Bank and they start shooting rockets, they can shoot rockets into every major Israeli city and destroy the Israeli economy completely.
Israel has the full right to defend itself against any hostile attacks, okay? However,
look what's happened when we were defending against Gaza.
Yes, but this is not grounds for any country just permanently staying in another area just because, like, you know, Israel will. Yes, there will be attacks. Yes, Israel will have to defend itself. Every country that is being attacked needs to defend itself. This is not grounds for the permanent, you know, seizure of a land and holding a whole bunch of people hostage without them being able to decide who leads them. Are the Palestinians in the West Bank, in Gaza, brainwashed enough to choose bad? Yes, they will. But the West Bank, for example, the Palestinians in the West Bank, would they? Why not remove the settlements? Why not just come out and just let the West Bank at least have its own government and its own right to self-determination? Do you think the Palestinians in the West Bank, if they do attack, then Israel will defend itself? Israel has the right to defend itself, not just by itself, but help of its ally. The threats to Israel by any other foreign nation is not grounds for settlement, for permanent settlement, and for permanent decision making and ruling and dominating an entire group of people, even if those groups of people are a threat to Israel, that's not grounds for any action like this. Either you have to let that country become independent, or if you want to hold it, if you think for your own security you have to hold this land forever, then you have to, because you're ruling over these people, you have to give everyone citizenship. You cannot just hold this status quo. Either give everybody absolute citizenship and treat them like your own citizens, or just let them be their own state. You can't just be in this limbo. And then also get all of a sudden get offended that you're being called an apartheid. You are ruling over a group of people that don't have the same rights.
First of all, the Palestinians in the West Bank have their own government, which they voted for. No,
I didn't say no. See, I didn't say they don't have their own government. I said that I said the government that is making the decisions that influences their lives the most is not their government. Israel, yes, they have their government, but the government that decides what goods they get, where do they get to go. I have been to the West Bank. The checkpoints, the walls, it's insane. If I had to go through that every day, I would pull my hair out.
Make peace.
This is not how you can make peace. You can't just hold the land and then do settlements. You can't just cut off access. Well, how would you make peace with a group of people that you are you're making peace impossible with the settlements? You're making peace impossible by
let's say we have a peace agreement.
You are adding fuel to the fire by holding an open prison in Gaza and constantly making these people's lives more and more miserable. And then you're saying I wonder why there's radicals coming out of here. I wonder why these people don't want peace.
The blockade of Gaza can be lifted in 5 minutes. All they have to do is agree to Israel's very reasonable conditions. The conditions are
Israel. I'm not going to defend these radical groups in Gaza, okay? But these radical groups are partly responsible. Israel's government is partly responsible for these. Well, when religion plus poverty plus desperation creates radicalism. If you blockade, these blockades are part of the reason why people will become radical.
When you have
Israel is on record for funding a lot of these radical groups back in the early history. Especially specifically to create conflicts between Palestinians, so that the more reasonable Palestinians doesn't do a peace agreement with Israel, because Israel's government
was no more reasonable.
No, there were radicals, and there were also other hostile groups.
No, even though they were hostile,
there were different groups that were ready to do a deal. But Israel didn't want that. Israel needed these radical groups within the Palestinians to make peace for the Palestinians difficult. It needed conflict between the Palestinians itself. Israel's government feeds on these radical groups because it needs an enemy. Israel's politics is dependent.
That's not Israeli policy.
One problem that the current Israel government is having is that the Palestinians are not a threat to them anymore, because Israel's army is so strong that we know that Hamas and Hezbollah will not be able to challenge Israel anymore. And that's why Israel needs a bigger boogeyman. And that's why Israel now needs the Islamic Republic of Iran, because Israel's politics feeds upon the fear of the Israeli people of the fact that any day that their existence could it needs an existential crisis at all times. Okay, and this is why Israel is directly responsible for the growth of these radical groups, and now is having an identity crisis because Palestinians cannot be a threat anymore. But go on, sorry.
Yeah, so Israel, Hamas, Gaza, again can. If the Gaza government agrees to the 3 conditions that Israel gave it, which is to recognize Israel's right to exist, to renounce terrorism, and to ratify previous agreements, it's very, very minimal and unreasonable conditions, then the blockade will be lifted. But they don't. I
already know that. I acknowledge that. But
continue war. If you want to continue war, a blockade is legitimate in war.
Hey, I said I know Hamas is insane. Okay, if you want to say but Hamas bad, nobody disagrees with that.
It's the
Hamas is
Gaza
insane.
government,
Hamas is
not Hamas. It's the Gaza government.
Yes, I know. But we can't pretend that Israel is not responsible for the growth of these radical movements.
What can
that is
Israel
now
do right now?
impossible. Well, I mean, honestly, with the Gaza Strip, I have no freaking clue. Okay, but with West Bank, you could stop the settlements. Okay, you could stop the settlements.
Okay, I agree with you there.
You could accept the Palestinian state as its own. You know what? I actually would prefer if you just stop trying to make Israeli a Jewish state and just give everybody citizenship. But I know that's like a la la land that never is going to happen.
No,
I know that, but I know. I mean, if my dreams were coming true, everybody between the Mediterranean and the Jordan, like everybody would just become one nation and everybody would have equal rights. But again, that's like rainbows and butterflies, impossible situation. But what I think what reasonable people in Israeli politics would do would just accept the West Bank at least as an independent, autonomous country with Palestinians people having the full right to, elect a government that is it and only it is responsible for their daily lives, and all the settlements in the West Bank would be, swapped for other lands with the new Palestinian government, and they would own all those lands. All the Jewish people that are settled there would either pay the new owners or pay rent to the new owners that own that land, or because of their safety, just come back to Israel, and something like that would happen. All right. And yes, would that mean that the West Bank is now going to have groups that is going to be a threat to Israel? Yes, probably so. But Israel can rely on its advanced military and it helps of its allies. Israel would have more allies in the world if it completely left the West Bank, and it could rely more on the international community. It could rely at least. Okay, you shake your head. It could rely on the United States, which is the world's greatest military power, and it is to defend us. I'm sure West Bank. Here's the thing: whatever West Bank has, I'm sure Israel will be able to defend itself. Israel needs to worry about more about the Islamic Republic of Iran, more than whatever the future West Bank is going to be. That's not going to be.
No,
that's not going to be an
no. Let me. Okay, so we saw what happened in Gaza. After Israel cleared out and gave Gaza to the Palestinians completely, cleared out all the settlements, everything that you say you should do in the West Bank. They immediately elected Hamas, and Hamas, like I said, annulled the peace and said that we are going to annihilate Israel, and started lobbing rockets into Israeli cities. Israel blockaded it and gave it those conditions that I mentioned, and Hamas refused. Now, that's the 15 years it's been going on. Now,
is Gaza Strip a threat now to Israel?
Yes, it's not to Israel, but to all the cities around it, because it's shooting rockets. It's destroying the economy. Now, if we allow that in the West Bank, it will destroy the economy of Israel completely.
The security
this is okay.
Let me. The security cost to Israel for holding these lands without letting these people have their own government, the security cost to Israel, this international fuel for radicalism against Israel. Israel has become less of a safe place because it holds these countries more than the risk. Israel has all the capacity to defend itself against the Gaza Strip and a future independent West Bank if it completely removes these things. Okay, if these baby countries, future baby countries, are nothing compared to the threat of the Islamic Republic of Iran to Israel, and Israel could still can even defend itself against the Islamic Republic of Iran. Okay, and another thing, the way that you will eventually reduce the threat. Okay, so let's say these are become fully independent countries. Okay, you know what maybe a strategy would be to reduce the threat? Would there be an initial radical hotbed for radical groups as a way for them to attack Israel? Yes. Will Israel be able to defend itself with the help of the United States? Yes. Will there still be some costs associated with this? Yes. But you know what will stop that cost eventually or reduce it eventually? Trade. Okay, is trade and helping Palestine become a stable country where it needs other countries to buy and sell from. Or Israel already, in the meantime, Israel already has workers in the West Bank. Okay, West Bank is the source of a customer base and a source of work labor for Israel. The more that grows,
you are assuming that the Palestinians accept Israel. There's
I don't
no
assume this.
basis. There's no basis to assume that.
This is already happening. The fact that a lot of Palestinians in the West Bank get their income because of the stuff that they sell to Israel has already softened the radicalism. So this is not something that I'm assuming.
Okay.
This is something that we see in practice.
So we hope that in the that in the future it will bring to the Palestinians to accept that Israel has a right to exist. But right now, they have moved completely away from the two-state solution. The Palestinian activists no longer believe in it, and no longer advocate for it. What we are seeing, by the way, is kind of the collapse of the Palestinian national identity. The West Bank is kind of splitting into, the different families. Every family now has an armed militia. There's kind of a civil war in the air there.
How about this? Would you agree with this? Do you agree with this solution in the meantime, at least? Okay. What about Israel investing in the economic development of the Gaza Strip and West Bank to make it economically prosperous, which would be in its own national interest, because it would be a great labor force and a customer base if the Palestinian people become more economically, make more economic progress.
Israel and the entire world have been pouring billions and billions of dollars into the
billions. Yeah.
None of it is helping any, because the Palestinian governments are corrupt. But
that's the problem. They're going through the Palestinian government. They're going through the Palestinian government. That's the problem. Would you agree with an increase of that as a way? Because what's their solution if you don't accept that solution?
Right now, I don't see the solution. I think that I tell you what the problem. I tell you what I see the problem. The problem is right now. I think that right now the problem is that the Palestinian identity is in crisis, and not just the Palestinian identity. The entire Arab identity is in crisis. The entire Arab world and the Muslim world. You have basically now a crisis of the Palestinian identity. You have a crisis of the Arab identity. You have a crisis of the Muslim identity. And you have a crisis also in the family, structure. It's an Arab, Palestinians are an Arab society, so it's kind of this patriarchal Arab families. Even that is kind of falling apart right now because of the modern world and all that. I see the only thing I see is to wait until they solve the problems, and then maybe we can talk about something.
Do you agree that the IDF, for people who don't know, the Israeli Defense Force, they publicly admitted that their snipers at the border, when the Palestinians were at the border coming out with the protests and everything, that they on purpose shot people who were just standing, people who weren't even attacking the border.
No, they didn't admit to
children. No, they said every bullet was like, they know everywhere. They posted on their own Facebook page that they know every bullet where it landed was on purpose, and every bullet was accounted for, and every bullet was intentional. They admitted that. And this was when they were shooting children. We have records of them shooting people that were just standing there during the protest.
Well, send that to me. I didn't see that, because in Israel the story was that initially the soldiers who were there were not snipers, and because of that they hit a lot of civilians in the first day.
That's not what they said.
On the second day they brought in the snipers, and it became better. And then they started to
after innocent civilians were killed. After that, the IDF posted that every single bullet was accounted for and was intentional. and no bullet lands anywhere unless they willed it to. That's what they said. And you're saying according to media. So you're like are you just consuming Israeli media then?
No, I'm telling you the story in Israel. That was the the story, and you know, I don't know. So you send me that that thing about what the IDF said, because I didn't see that. But
do you actively follow the people who are against like the crimes that Israel commits? Like, do you actively follow the content that might be disagreeing to your position? Because I consume both sides.
Yeah, I look at some of it. They're just lying.
I mean, if that's your pre-assumptions before you watch it, you're going to be extremely biased. Like, you do have to consider.
I know, but I see what they're saying. A lot of that is just spreading lies, but there is no policy by the government to attack civilians.
I know there is, because they're not. Again, they're not. I'm not. That's not a high bar. That's a very low bar. Okay. I'm not saying. Okay. Here's the
now,
thing.
Are there war crimes? Yeah, in every war. Now, are they being handled? You know, the war crimes? Not really. It's not very easy to do that.
They could
soldiers will not.
They could accept the ICC.
Soldiers will not tell on each other. Because they're friends and they rely on each other's lives. So
they could allow the ICC. They could allow the ICC to come and take a look.
We don't trust them.
Okay, well, there you go.
We don't trust them. All the human rights groups are kind of been taken over by activists.
You know, the countries that blame all human rights groups as like biased are often countries with not a very good human rights record.
But no, I don't trust any of them now.
That sounds something like my government says. Just to be honest.
No, the kind of the whole discussion of human rights has been corrupted. So I lost.
The Islamic Republic of Iran agrees. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, look, that's one of the problems, and I don't trust things that are being said about Iran either.
No.
So I think we lost the ability to kind of criticize them in that matter. In that manner, for instance, the human rights of okay. Can we go back to the discussion? I was still talking about the nation state. What I'm claiming is that you must have a nation state to have a democracy, because if you must have the national identity that holds people together.
I don't know anybody that is against a nation state. What we're against is an ethno state.
Again,
yeah, but go on.
What is because if you don't have the national identity to hold everybody together, then you just disintegrate and start talking about differences in race, religion, class, all that, and I think we see that in the West now. The West is kind of moving away from the nation state, and I worry for the West because of that. And I'm trying to tell them, just look at Israel and follow its lead. But the problem is, because they forgot what a nationality is, they understand it as an ethno state. So for instance, those in America who say that they want to be like Israel, they're promoting white nationalism, which is not, again, it's not that. Anyone can be a Jew. Not anyone can be white. And so, so see, this is something that you refuse to accept. But for us, it's obvious that
What are your thoughts on the Palestinian right to return?
Right to return to Israel? No.
Why not? They lived there. They lived there for generations.
They lived there as colonizers.
They lived as colonizers.
Yeah, they live as colonizers.
Because why? How so?
It was the homeland of the Jews.
Home of the. Okay, so should the Americans leave United States because that was the home of
the Americans, and the American and the Indians came to an agreement. They came to a settlement which gave Indians sovereignty over parts of land, and so they solved it.
Should the Arabs in the 22 Arab countries, all of them go back to Arabia?
Look, if
should they leave? Should the Arabs that all around the world that live in Iraq, in Lebanon, in Egypt, all of North Africa, okay? Should because they should all go back to Saudi Arabia and they should live there?
It's not about going back. It's about coming to.
No, you said the Arabs in Palestine because I don't know, 3,000 years ago the Jews 2,500 years ago the Jews lived in Israel, and that's why even though the Palestinians who lived there for generations, because thousands of years ago the Jews used to be there, that makes them the colonizers of that land. Well, then by that standard, the Arabs who are living in Lebanon are also colonizers. The Arabs who are living in Iraq are also colonizers. The Arabs who are living in Egypt, in Tunisia, all of that, they all go to and live in Saudi Arabia?
They should come to a term if there is, still the ethnicity that lived there before. If they still exist, they should come to some sort of agreement.
All the Iraqis.
As for the Arabs, the Arabs were welcomed to stay in Israel, but they started the war. Now the
wait, I want to take this conclusion.
They start the war, and Israel, to basically.
I want to take this reasoning to the natural conclusion, okay?
Yeah.
Because the Arabs who live in Iraq, that used to be ancient. Iraq used to be ancient Persia, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Should all the Arabs in Iraq just like, hey, here Iran, take over Iraq? We're going to, because we're Arab, we're going to go back and live in Saudi Arabia. Sorry for
not go live in Saudi Arabia. You can still live in Iraq, but you have to come to an agreement.
No, you said they're colonizers because that was Persia. That was ancient Persia.
Okay,
you said if the natives are still around, well, yeah, Persians are still around. Should they just give that land to Iran and go live in Saudi Arabia?
They should come to an agreement. They should work it out and recognize that
why would the ethnicity of the people who lived there thousands of years ago matter to the daily lives of people today? Can't just go. Yeah.
Well, if it doesn't matter, then there's no problem. But for the Jews, it did matter. The Jews kept on throughout the generations. They kept on dreaming about praying every single day to return to their homeland of Israel. And they were denied the ability to do so by the different empires that colonized the
Who
country.
was living there before the Jewish people? They took it from someone else. Weren't the Canaanites living there?
The Canaanites became absorbed into the Jews, and they don't exist anymore.
Oh, okay. So if you live there, make sure you wipe them completely out. That's the only way to make sure you get them.
Absorb them. Come to some sort of an agreement, and then you are legitimate.
I don't think the Canaanites agreed to anything.
There was no. There's no. We don't really know what happened, but the idea is that we believe that it's just.
I think it's just ridiculous to go back and look at who was where thousands of years ago and just assign land accordingly.
No. Again, this is one of the lies. Okay, this is one of the things I want to talk about. It's like Palestinians are saying, "Oh, we are the descendants of the Canaanites." Okay,
who cares who's the
descendant? What is the identity? What's the connection? What's the identity? The Jews have the same identity that they had back then, and
no. Oh yes. My God, they didn't. Judaism today is so different from Judaism back then.
Essentially the same.
It's completely different.
Okay,
it's literally a different religion. It's completely different.
We're not talking about the religion. We're talking about the nation. Now,
at that time, it was the same. These things were the same. But go on. So
okay,
actually,
not the same.
At
Not
that
the same.
time they were the same.
Not the
At
same.
that time, your religion and your identity were the same thing. It was
No.
fact. Actually, this is very good. The fact that we have a lot of atheist Jews today, and that this concept back then in Israel, your relationship to Yahweh, your Jewish identity was completely tied to religion. And the fact that you're saying now it's not shows how completely different this whole issue of identity
so
is.
let me explain this. Okay?
You consider yourself a Jew, and you don't believe in Yahweh. This was not even imaginable back then when you were.
Okay, so let me unpack this. The Jews who lived in Judea back then believed in many gods. But they were still considered Jews. They believed in many gods.
You just proved yourself wrong.
Yahweh was just the main one, the national one.
No, the Jewish religion, that's the Jewish religion that you're describing, is before the temple destruction, before the first temple destruction, and before the liberation by the Persian Empire, before Cyrus the Great, because they had an identity crisis. You're describing Judaism before the Jewish people came back from Babylon back to Jerusalem, because let alone comparing Judaism back then with Judaism now is completely different. In fact, rabbinic Judaism is completely different from pre-rabbinic Judaism. But even before that, Judaism before the first temple destruction is completely different from Judaism after the first temple destruction. You cannot pretend that this whole identity has been completely the same. It has gone through so much evolution and so much change. It's like you could argue that it's a completely different religion. But go on.
Again, I'm not talking about the religion. I'm talking about.
But the fact that you're not talking about the religion is an example of how much change we're talking about, because the idea of this identity being separate from the religion is also a modern concept. But go on. Sorry.
No. Look, there's a kind of a argument when it started, but let's talk about 7th century BC in Judea. We know that we're talking about this when Deuteronomistic Judaism. The basic origin story of the Jewish nation was then established. The story of Abraham and all that, but also the story of the Exodus from Egypt. Then became the story of Exodus from Egypt. Then became the origin story and started to be told every year on Passover. That was the Passover ritual, which evolved into the Seder night, in which Jewish parents sit and tell their children the story of our nation, the story of how we were created and how we won our sovereignty in the land of Israel. That's one thing. And it keeps on to this day. That alone says that we are the same nation.
It doesn't.
I'm not done.
Doesn't.
I'm not done.
Okay.
Circumcision. We don't know why Jews started circumcising their children, but in the 7th century BC already, it was to mark the covenant between Abraham and God that says that the seed of Abraham will inherit the land of Israel. Now, by circumcising, you basically join this covenant, and it's not, by the way, it's not a race thing, because you don't have to be of the seed of Abraham. You can join and circumcise yourself, and then you become part of the covenant as well. So this was kind of the ancient version of of today's citizenship, the circumcision thing. And Jews kept on doing that throughout the ages. Again, they kept on the Seder night ritual for every generation. Passed on the identity from generation to generation for 2,700 years. Same thing with the circumcision. And okay, those are two rituals. There are several more. I don't want to bore you, but this is basically, so we are the same nation that we were. Now, the nation, of course, changes its culture. It changes, religious makeup, changes racial makeup, all sorts of things. But the national identity remains the same.
Can I speak now? Because if you want to hang your argument of Judaism being the same over the past, 2,000 years or so, then you are going to find things that stay the same and many things that change dramatically. No. Okay,
the essence remains the same. The essence of a nation.
I let you. Hey, you told me to let you finish, and I didn't speak. Right. Yeah. So now it's my turn for you to let me finish. Okay. The essence, actually, the foundation even changed. Okay, the very nature of the religion changed. Even back then, before and after the first temple destruction, the concepts are like Judaism went from a polytheistic religion with multiple gods to a religion that was constantly focused on Yahweh, to all of a sudden becoming a monotheistic religion because of the Persian influence. Judaism went from a religion that didn't even have angels and demons to being a religion because of the Persian influence, all of a sudden having angels and demons. Judaism went from a pre-rabbinic religion that didn't have an afterlife. I did kind of had to show, but didn't have heaven and hell, all of a sudden becoming a religion that had heaven and hell and angels and demons. Judaism went from a religion where Satan was just one person and Yahweh's court to all of a sudden, from the Zoroastrian influence, becoming a religion that made the world into binary good and bad. The whole concept of making the world the battle between good and bad, Yahweh versus Satan, that was because of the influence of Zoroastrian. And that was a fundamental change in the way that the entire Abrahamic religions, now Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, look at the world in this good and evil binary because of the Zoroastrian influence. And it's interesting to me that the things that you're focusing on to show that that it has been the same actually proves my point, because the ethnic part of it proves my claim that this is about ethnicity, right? Because first of all, you claim once about the story of the Exodus, which is interesting because Judaism used to be two religions before that, and that story was part of one of the religions, and then eventually they merged and it became a part of the one religion that had that story. Like there was one religion that had Moses' story, and it was another religion that had Abraham's story, and these used to be two different religions, and they were merged together. So even that story was part of a different religion. But then you mentioned the circumcision example, right? The circumcision example, and that, which is actually one of the most harmful things about Abrahamic religions. It was a crime against humanity that are torturing children everywhere around the world without anesthetics. So if that is the culture that we're trying to defend, that's a horrible practice that needs to be eradicated, right? And also that whole practice is about a covenant, and you're trying to make a claim that this covenant was not about a group based on their ethnic identity, where the text itself makes it clear that this is over and over and over again, that this is about the children of Abraham. This is based on ancestry that you could track back to Abraham. It makes it completely ethnic. I mean, if you want to use that example, there's no better example to show that this is not, and this identity that you think that is the same. This example, more than anything, shows that this is a racial identity. This is an ethnic identity. But go on.
I just made the point that it's not, because you don't have to be of the there's the base, like every nation, there is the initial tribe, and then people join in, and so you could join in by circumcising.
It says the sons of Abraham. It was a covenant. You mentioned the covenant. This was a covenant between the God and the children of Abraham,
which you can join. You can join. You can become part of it.
Where in any of the texts? So this is a modern suggestion. Okay. Oh, it was also
no. It's in the Bible. No. It's in the Bible.
Where in the Bible suggests that you can become a Jew? It says it's the children of. It says explicitly makes it clear that this was a covenant with the children of Abraham. Okay.
No, the Bible talks a lot about the word is ger, which means someone was being circumcised, and so someone from another nation that has been circumcised and joined
Abraham. Yahweh said that I will make a covenant with you and your children, and you will have as many children as the number of stars out there.
Yeah.
And you will do this for me. For some reason, this god was obsessed with foreskins for some reason.
Yeah.
And you will give me foreskins, and I will give you children and your children. And it says specifically, this is something that all your children need to do. I mean, it's very explicit. This part is very explicit.
And the people will join in. And look, it's throughout the Bible. To talk about the
read it. Where does it say and the people who join in? Where? Give me the verse. Where does it say the people who join in?
I'm not an expert on the Bible, but let's just see if I can find
one. Okay, maybe I'm right. Okay, actually, I would be happy to change my opinion on this. Maybe everything I've read seems to suggest otherwise.
Okay.
Anyways, maybe for the purpose of maybe send it to me, and if you find it, I will put it in the description.
I will do it later. Where are we? Okay. So the examples that you brought again, you kept on talking about the Jewish identity, the religious identity, instead of talking about the national identity, which national identity is the thing that's basically tied to the land and all that, and to our values, to our national values as a sovereign nation that lives in its homeland. That's what a national identity means. Yes. So and that identity was maintained through the years. I mentioned those two rituals. There's also, you can talk about the what is called Amidah prayer, and which Jews would pray every day, 3 times a day, since the 1st century AD, I think, and which they pray to one day return to the land of Israel and as a nation and be sovereign again. Now the land of Israel in the 2,000 years of exile was conquered by many empires. Christian Empire, first the Roman Empire, then the Christian empires, then the the Muslim empires, and they people they had citizens there, those empires. No one has ever made it their homeland. They were basically just citizens of an occupying force. They knew that the Jews are praying every day to return to the land, but both Christianity and Islam have a need to keep the Jew in a wretched state, and because of that, they would not allow the Jews to return, and kept them in a wretched state, poor and weak, and unable to. And that is why the Jews had to live in exile for 2,000 years, still dreaming of returning to their country, until we became strong enough to win our country back. So now we are back. Now the Arabs who were living here, they had the right to be part of us. They chose instead to fight it. And by the way, because of imperialistic thought, this idea of Dar al-Islam, that no non-Muslim government can be in this land because it's Dar al-Islam. So they fought it. They lost the war. In the fight, because Israel needed the ability to defend itself. It drove away some of the Arabs who lived there. Now, after the war, I'm talking about the Israeli Independence War of 1948. After the war, the UN decreed that any Arab was.
I don't want us to go through because this is you could watch a history timeline of all this. Can you? Because I don't want us to just go through the entire history. There's so many videos on that. But do you want to make the points, the main points that you want to make, given the history, and then we also have some questions in the live chat for you. We want to go to those.
After the war, the Palestinians, the UN decreed that any Arab who wants to return to Israel and live peacefully with its Jewish neighbors should be allowed to do so. No Arab willing to live peacefully with their Jewish neighbors, the Arabs continue to reject the Jewish state and its right, the Jews' right to sovereignty and all that. And now, over the years, we've come to the realization that the Arabs living here have developed a national identity, a Palestinian national identity, which did not exist before 1917. Before, and because of that, we said, okay, so they are also indigenous to this land. It's a nation that was born here. And that is why we are willing to make a two-state solution. But the two-state solution means that there's one Jewish state and one Palestinian state. Now, if any Palestinian, wants the right of return, wants to return here, they have to become Jewish. They have to be naturalized and become Jewish.
Oh, so you think, okay, so what do you suggest? Would you say, so it's given that for you at least, Jewish and Israeli means the same thing, how would you be okay with with just calling them Israeli instead of Jewish? Would that be okay?
What do you mean? No, again,
you just said they're synonymous. Okay, fine. Naturally.
What I said though, that we're using Israeli for the
why not both? Would you be opposed to just calling it both the national identity and the legal citizenship? Just refer to both of them as Israeli. Would you be okay with that, given that they mean the same thing?
It comes from a long history. You can't just change words, meaning of words.
I have already told you. I'm not going to go back to my previous arguments for why this is a problem. But
why isn't it a problem that you can be of Netherlands citizenship and a Dutch nationality, or U.S. citizenship and American nationality?
It's completely fine because those names don't refer to ethnicities. Okay, those names do not refer.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. The American is an ethnicity. It has values.
American refers to an ethnicity.
Yeah, it has values. It has values that was created at some point in history.
Values and ethnicity are two different things. So you're saying value. You're saying it has values. You're saying values and as ethnicity.
Yeah, ethnicity is basically based on certain values that people
can
join.
It's also based on heritage. It's also based on ancestry. It's based on blood.
Yeah, not necessarily.
That's a problem. Not necessarily.
But again, in many countries
that would not necessarily. So you're saying there's this could lead to an ethnic state then. This whole thing could lead to an ethnic state because you are defining someone's national identity based on something that could. Based on their ethnicity. Here's what you did. You're saying, you say ethnicity could be based on value, right? But ethnicity is based on bloodline. So you were kind of suggesting that values and ethnicity go hand in hand. So if you're acknowledging that this is about ethnicity, then you're acknowledging that this is a way for us to open the door to an ethno state.
Ethnicity.
You see what you just did there?
Ethnicity starts from an initial tribe, which has its own values. And then people can join in by accepting those values. Okay,
so you are now saying an ethnicity is something that you could come into and leave, right?
Yes.
Okay, so therefore it's okay. Hold on. So now you're saying that it's okay to have a system that is based on people's ethnicity because ethnicity is based on could be based on values. That's what you're saying.
Well, yeah, I mean, if that's how you define it, yes.
Okay, so tell me again how you're not an ethno state. You are making an argument right now for why it's okay to make the decision of who's a citizen and who's not a citizen based on their ethnicity, given that an ethnicity is based on values. So you are now arguing in favor of an ethno state, but then
if we accept my definition of ethnicity, then many countries in the world, in the Western world as well, are ethno states.
Okay. All right. So you do not reject the accusation of being an ethno state.
Again, it depends on the definition. But I don't see the big difference. People are trying to make a difference between ethnic nationality and civic nationality, and I don't see it.
What are these values that you speak of, by the way, that people have to accept for them to be a Jew?
Oh,
what are these values?
No, the traditional values of Judaism.
Well, like what? Give me some examples.
There's many, but
the main ones. Give me the main ones.
Well, we talk about compassion. We talk about all sorts of values that are Jewish values.
Wait! You're saying that you have to have compassion, and then that makes you a Jew?
Those are the values. Again, you
give me the values. You're saying that being a Jew is not an ethnicity. It's not a religion. Okay, it's not racial. It's not a religion. You're saying it's a value system. Okay.
Let's say education is a very being smart, being learned is a Jewish thing. It's there's a whole host of things that define a nation.
If you like education and compassion, that makes you more Jewish. And if you don't like education and compassion, that makes you less Jewish?
No, it's kind of tied with many other
You don't
things.
have a definition for values that makes define Judaism.
Because it's not clearly defined. It's the spirit of the nation. It comes from the culture.
You're defining your national. Who gets to have the national identity? Who gets to enjoy being part of the nation based on something that you are not even clear about?
I'm not defining on basically on that. To become part of the nation, you have to you have to show that you are part of us. Yeah, you have to.
But you're not even clear what that means. You're saying it's vague.
No,
you don't even know what that means.
If you immigrate to Israel and you serve in the army, or you send your children to serve in the army, and you say, okay, I'm defending the country. I want to be seen as a Jew. Most Israelis will agree. Will say, okay, you're a Jew.
Most Israelis will agree with you if you just announce that you're a Jew and be like, okay, that's how it works.
Yeah, if you live here for a while and you speak Hebrew, again, like I said, 5% of Jews in Israel today, 5% of Jews in Israel today are Christian by faith.
One thing I like about Israel when I was there, it was that people didn't agree. So that you're trying to like this. There was constant disagreement over everything.
That's right,
and that's a good thing. So for you to say that most Israelis would have this view on something, I don't think that's honest. Because one great thing about Israel is this constant, argument.
Yeah, disagreement. But I'm saying that most will agree.
This is not something that, I don't think you could say that. I don't think you could like speak for all Israelis like that. But anyway,
we have examples.
I will go for the questions. Let me see. Wow, actually, we got so many questions. Okay, here. All right. Question number 1. Cool Cat is saying, what is your opinion on modern Judaism vis-a-vis what do you think in modern Judaism stopping the practice of circumcision? Like, do you agree with stopping the practice?
Many Israelis now talk about that. Like I said, the circumcision was kind of the ancient version of citizenship. So I'm saying we don't really need that anymore. We have citizenship, so we don't really need circumcision. But it's a very, very strong part of the Jewish identity. So it's not going to go away anytime soon.
It should be considered a crime, I think. I mean, I'm right about that, actually. I don't know. All right, let's continue with this one. Why did the Circassians and the Druze integrate fine with the state of Israel, yet the Palestinians did not? Could it be the Palestinians are anti-Semitic, just like their Grand Mufti was? Okay, guys, I'm not going to respond to the questions. I'm great because I already mentioned all my disagreements. So I'm just going to ask your questions from the guests, and then that we could move on. Yeah, answer this one. Your opinion.
You want my opinion on that?
Yeah. I'm just gonna let people know. I'm gonna try not to meddle anymore because.
Okay. So look, Jews, by the way, are kind of a
quick answer.
An example. Yeah, an example. They integrate fine, and yet they don't want to be considered Jews because they're Jews. Just like they want to have their own identity. So they are a minority. But yeah, they integrate. So we don't call them Jews because they don't want to be Jews. But still, they can live here and integrate and everything. As for the Palestinians, they don't want they don't want to be part of the Jewish nation. That's
all right. This one. Troll is saying, in a historical context, does Jew not refer to Judea specifically and Israel, encompassing other similar tribes around Judea?
Pretty much. Yeah, Jew. The word Jew means Judean. It's just I don't know when it changed, kind of in English, but in Hebrew it's Yehudi. Yeah, it's from Yehuda. It's.
All right, so this is for me, and I'm going to respond quickly to it. You saying, Armin, you have many countries with ethnic fast tracks in their migration laws, like Ireland, Lithuania, Finland, and a few examples. Yeah, and I'm against every single one of those policies. Okay, I'm not inconsistent. Ethnicity should not be something that people value. It should be completely irrelevant. All right, let's do Michael saying, just like one has to adapt. Okay, these are not questions, so I'm just going to move on. Questions not from me, guys. Questions for the guest. Okay. Any more questions? Oh, there's so many. You guys just have comments. You just want me to read your comments. I'm not going to read your comments anymore, guys. You just give me your question. Okay, so these are just all comments. So this one is saying, "Shut up, Armin. We know what you like about Israel. Oh yeah, that's true. I'm actually very attracted to IDF girls.
Yeah."
That was very fun in Israel. That's the best thing about Israel.
The uniform look hot, yeah.
That is objectively true. Guys, I am a Zionist. I actually love Israel. I want Israel to survive. I want Israel to prosper. I want Israel to be able to defend itself. I acknowledge, I don't deny Israel's war crimes and human rights violations and its racism. And all of that, and the influence of Orthodox Judaism, I will highlight all of those things. But I also don't deny the fact that Israel is the hub of entrepreneurship, advanced technology that has been gifted to the world. The whole world benefits from the entrepreneurship and the advanced technology of Israel. That it's a liberal country that respects gay rights. That it is a democracy with all its flaws. I can see the good and the bad, and I could highlight both of them at the same time. Okay, it's also a beautiful country with an amazing history, and if you haven't been to Israel, you have not traveled. Okay, so I love it.
Yeah. Let me say, I enjoyed this conversation, and I like that you challenged me, and I think it was good challenges, which I had to come up with answers and actually, I got to say basically a lot of the things that I wanted to say through your questions.
Great. So I didn't stop you from. So I didn't stop you from saying the things you wanted to say. So you got
no, and it's good. I mean, instead of me just giving a spiel of the rhetoric, which is something that you can watch my video. I have several videos on that, which I make my points, and there I just that's just me talking. Here I had to answer questions. And I actually can see by the comments that a lot of people kind of agreed with me. So
yeah, most people agreed with you in the live chat. I'm just going to remove the overlay so people could see the full name of your channel. So you can see the full name of the channel. Guys, go check this out. If you're interested in Zarathustra, again, Zarathustra is easier for me to say. Zarathustra Serpent, or how do you say Zarathustra? How do you say the English version?
Yeah, it's Zarathustra's Serpent.
Zarathustra. You know the actual name is Zarathustra, right? Did you know that, or did you just?
No, I didn't know that. I didn't know
okay. So so go check that out. Go check out his channel. This is basically cultural appropriation. You guys are just stealing our profits. This is a person. I'm kidding.
Well, Nietzsche did the stealing. I'm just I'm not appropriating Nietzsche. So.
Yeah. So guys, go. Would you like people who disagree with you to also come over and challenge you?
Yeah.
All
Come
right.
in. I will. Look, unless you're coming for spite. If you come for spite, I'm not going to answer you. But
Okay.
if you want serious questions, I will. I respond to my comments.
Oh, Pyra is saying Armin wants Israeli woman and to work for Mossad. Both of these are actually true. I don't.
Mhm.
This is not a joke. It's both of them are completely true. By the way, Mossad, you still haven't called me. I'm still available. If you need me, I would be able to do a lot of interesting videos. If you actually hire me, just call me. You know how to reach me. Okay. Do you have any contacts in Mossad that I could like approach for me to get hired?
Maybe I do.
Maybe. Okay, I'm kidding. All right, guys. So I'm gonna end this here. Thank you, everybody in the live chat, and for your questions and everything. Hold on. Do you want me to read one more? No, this is like a long question. I'm gonna hit it. Oh, what the Qasim mentioned, last thing. Qasim, who is also from Iran, actually he's in Iran, asked in the live chat that we Iranians saved you once. Cyrus the Great saved you, right, from the Babylonians.
Mhm.
Can you now return the favor by saving the Iranians from the Islamic Republic of Iran? Can you return the favor?
I'm afraid you're going to have to do it yourself. I don't
Why?
think.
We saved you.
Yeah. We see what happens when an outside force tries to save people in the Middle East from the.
We did it and it worked. We did it to you and it worked. You went back to Jerusalem, outside force in the Middle East.
Yeah, that was 26,000 years ago.
So
100 years ago.
If it lasts long enough, you're just gonna forget that we did that. You're just not gonna return the favor. I see how.
We tried once in Lebanon to go in and save them, and the Lebanese kind of.
I guess we're just better at saving people.
Could be.
Right?
Could be.
Right. And also, Music guy saying, guys, don't forget to like the stream. Please go ahead and like the stream. That helps the channel. Thank you very much, guys, and see you again next time. Bye.